Wilhelm Deathshead Strasse, a villain from Return to Castle Wolfenstein, has somehow given the Nazi war machine a quantum leap in technology and firepower. Allied High Command has launched a last desperate assault to kill him and turn the war around. Blazkowicz is sleeping in his plane, dreaming about his ideal life in which he has a wife, kids, and a dog, but laments that he's a warrior, and none of this is for him. His plane is then attacked by Nazi jets, one of which crashes into him face first, causing Blazkowicz to, with the voice of a tired old man, pontificate,
"Death at the gates again. All in my name. Can't greet you today. I have a war to win."
Eventually, he has to jump into another plane where a soldier asks about the odds, and with the biggest 1,000-yard stare he can muster, Blazkowicz mutters,
"Do or die, son. Same as always."
The new plane crashes and Blazkowicz, with only slightly more vigor in his voice, recounts his dire prospects.
It's the break of dawn. July 16, 1946. Everything has gone to shit. The Nazi war machine is advancing at an astonishing rate. We can't catch up. Our tactics are failing. Outclassed and outgunned. No one knows why. People are getting desperate. Not me. I'm here to see an old friend and settle a score. Turn this thing around.
In the midst of all the mayhem, Blazkowicz, a man who fought the supernatural without incident, suddenly looks at normal guns, bullets, grenades, and explosions and proclaims, "This ain't war, but the breaking of seals, the undoing of life itself." Blazkowicz begins to fight his way towards Deathshead's compound until he meets a nervous kid named Private Wyatt, whom he teaches a coping trick called count to 4, inhale, count to 4, exhale. From there, Blazkowicz climbs inside the castle, and with a voice filled with fatigue, stops to mopingly lament,
"Another kid you murdered, General. You captain. One of us is gonna die today."
Blazkowicz later sees a shot-down troop transport, and with the conviction of a tired Microsoft Sam, once again mopes,
"Troop transport. More dead kids. Seen this too many times."
before literally falling into Deathshead's laboratory, wherein he again laments,
"My people murdered. So many times. I lost count."
Deathshead forces Blazkowicz to choose one of his men to die. The process is so horrible that he is only able to cope by using the count to 4, inhale, count to 4, exhale trick. Blazkowicz ultimately gets tagged in the back of the head with some shrapnel and is taken to an insane asylum in Poland where he is taken care of by a nurse named Anya. One day, the Nazis arrive to purge the facility of undesirables and kill Anya's parents in the process. The gunfire snaps Blazkowicz out of his coma, and from there, he kills every Nazi in sight before riding with his nurse back to her grandparents' house. Blazkowicz watches her family grieve the loss of their loved ones and, never missing an opportunity to mope, says that he can't share in their grief because his sorrow would
Flood oceans. It would drown me if I let it out.
He is then informed that he's been out for 14 years, it's 1960, and the Nazis ruled the world now. He is further told that America surrendered after the Nazis atom-bombed the United States, something he recovers from within 5 to 10 seconds flat and never mentions again, before saying he'll find and help the resistance. After learning the location of the prison holding the resistance, Blazkowicz and Anya get on board a Nazi train, wherein Blazkowicz proceeds to bone a nurse he barely knows, because after all the mayhem, the suffering, and the death, all of which should be relatively tame in light of his encounter with the supernatural, he just needs to feel something good. On his way to the prison, Blazkowicz once again, with a voice that even Superman can barely hear, mopes, this time about the omnipresent Nazi tyranny.
Steel. Stone. Concrete for miles. I wonder if there's anything in this world worth saving. Desolation. Tyranny. Enemy of endless might. I'm wondering if I have any friends left standing.
He says that, if necessary, he'll take on the Reich by himself, but will rescue any friends he can find. A resolution that would be very compelling, if he didn't sound like he just fell into a vat of tranquilizers.
Friends, if this is where they're keeping you, I will find you and set you free.
Blazkowicz infiltrates the prison, gets a chance to read an article about the nuking of his country, shrugs it off, and frees the soldier he didn't kill, who takes him back to the resistance base, which is run by Caroline Becker, having survived her apparent death in Wolfenstein 2009. He tries to get some shut-eye, but it seems that even in his dreams, the world's first FPS character just can't stop moping.
Dreaming. Strange dream. The killing never stops. Till I die.
Blazkowicz is later sent to the London Nautica where, after getting really ticked off that the Nazis put the man on the moon, he discovers artifacts that the Reich is reverse engineering. The Resistance eventually concludes that a man named Set Roth is a living member of the cult that produced the Nazi technology, and he is locked up in a concentration camp. Blazkowicz infiltrates the camp, meets with Set, and they briefly talk about how whether or not it's possible that a good God could allow for suffering like this. Blazkowicz suggests that maybe God is testing them, an idea that Set ultimately scoffs at. After Blazkowicz bails him out and takes him back to the resistance base, it is revealed that Set's group, Dat Yeshud, communed with God by building advanced technology, and their stash was found by the Nazis, which they reverse engineered, giving them the unstoppable strength they needed to win the war. He tells them that there is a much larger safekeep, but it's at the bottom of the ocean floor, and they will need to steal a U-boat. While the others are making preparations for this operation, Blazkowicz once again decides to bone a nurse he barely knows, saying that he wants a relationship with her like this always. He eventually encounters Jay, a man who does nothing but play guitar, contributes nothing to the war effort, and might as well be called Not Jimi Hendrix. Not Jimi Hendrix tells Blazkowicz that after the Nazis conquered America, the U.S. government sold out to the Reich and started
kissing Nazi ass like it was the most natural thing in the world, you know?
Blazkowicz says he never fought for the America that surrendered, sold out to, and implemented Nazi policies. Not Jimi Hendrix scoffs at this. He says that America was no better than the Nazis even prior to the takeover because of the isolated lawless lynchings in the South and the legalized segregation across the nation as a whole. Blazkowicz does nothing to dispute the charge that these moral failings, one of which was common among all nations and the other the work of lawless men whose activities never even came close to being nationwide, made his country no better than an evil empire that, as a matter of national policy rather than isolated incidents, engaged in unlimited aggressive warfare, tried to take over the world, and killed literally millions of people en masse without a trial simply because they existed. In fact, he doesn't lose his temper at all until Not Jimi Hendrix calls him a Nazi, at which point he seizes Not Jimi Hendrix by the throat, only for Not Jimi Hendrix to smugly say that Blazkowicz now knows what it's like to suffer under oppression, just as he did in pre-Nazi America. On another occasion, Tekla, a schizophrenic savant, asks Blazkowicz, who had apparently just finished boning a nurse he barely knows, about consciousness. When Blazkowicz affirms the existence of the soul and free will, Tekla gets frustrated and leaves. Eventually, the nurse Blazkowicz boned but barely knows decides to tell him her life story. In brief, the Nazis killed her boyfriend, so she carried out various isolated strikes against them in retaliation. She had sex with one of her targets in order to get him to drop his guard, got pregnant, and rather than do the smart thing and just stay with her grandparents who supported her and used the pregnancy to lay low for a while, she decided to abort her own child. A child she repeatedly demonized as the, quote, Nazi baby inside her, end quote.
I can't have this Nazi baby inside me anymore. It has to come out. The Nazi baby is gone.
She did this so she can continue to engage in futile gestures against the Nazis that had no hope of doing anything meaningful before finally giving up. Blazkowicz acquires a U-boat, and the Resistance learns they need to get nuclear codes from the lunar base and set out to intercept Death's Head's top research scientist. In pursuit of this goal, Blazkowicz activates a device that tears the whole bridge apart, something that really impresses him, despite having wielded a medallion that gave him supernatural powers. Blazkowicz then infiltrates the moon base, grabs the codes, returns to Earth, gets a chance to look at a picture of the Nazis toppling the White House, shrugs it off, defeats a giant robot called the London Monitor, and makes it back to base, only to discover that most of his comrades have been captured and taken to Death's Head's compound. During the attack, Not Jimi Hendrix inexplicably plays the American national anthem in defiance, despite claiming that America was literally no better than the very Nazis who were gunning him down. The Resistance arrives at Death's Head's compound with intent of freeing their people and nuking the base. Blazkowicz once again dreams about his ideal life with the nurse he boned but barely knew at the time, saying it's agony to dream like this, but
Sometimes, truly, it's good to remember what you're fighting for.
He eventually reunites with the nurse he boned and suddenly, with no explanation whatsoever, goes full Batman and tells her that his dream of a happy life with her, the dream that he just said was good for morale, the dream that kept him fighting, the dream that minutes ago he seemed reasonably certain he could one day achieve, is now something that can't happen for some reason. Blazkowicz eventually confronts Deathshead and stabs him, only for the 100-year-old man to barely grab him and slowly pull out a grenade that Blazkowicz makes no attempt to seize, kick, or just run away from. The grenade goes boom, Blazkowicz drags his needlessly mutilated body to see his people escape, quotes the Statue of Liberty, and tells his people to nuke him. And that is the story of Wolfenstein: The New Order.